division really emerged from the mass communication and society division, and then attracted other people from newspaper and broadcast and other divisions that were associated with specific technologies. It was led by a group of researchers that were asking about the effects of economic factors and company decision-making on things like media structures and the kind of content that was available. And a lot of scholars in the other divisions really didn't understand those economic issues, policy issues that were behind it, or company research. And so they weren't as sympathetic with it. And so the decision was made to start a separate division, ME. It was media economics and then developed into MMEE. A lot of really important people in those days, people like Stephen Lacey, Michael Wirth, Ben Bates, Angela Powers, Tony Atwater, Barry Littman, Fred Fico, Sylvia Chandler-Pled, many of those were really important in trying to get this impetus to solidify a group of studies that built off of the understanding of the economic and managerial issues and what they did to the kind of media that we did. And so that was really how it established itself. And then it grew over time to bring in more and more people with other kinds of interests, and then in looking at those kind of economic and managerial factors. There was a point that came in the 1990s when a number of MME scholars were being asked by government agencies like the Federal Communications Commission, Department of Justice, Federal Trade Commission, and even Congress to consult and provide testimony or evidence about issues on media economics and management. And those were really important developments, I think. I think also the work that we were doing was getting out to companies. And so a lot of media companies and communications firms wanted to have better understanding of their businesses and began asking many of the members to come. And that all of those opened up some interesting avenues of activity for me particularly, and for many others in the divisions. And I think they were really important because they indicated the research and knowledge that we were compiling was significant and relevant to others and having impact. And that led to many more opportunities to take our research from the academic environment and apply it into policy environments and business environments. Well, I think for graduate students, doctoral students, I mean, even just for young scholars of all time that have an interest in this area, it is important to attend the conferences, to meet people and become involved in digital activities. You make contacts that you can use when you need information for research you're doing, or if you need advice on how to handle a particular issue and somebody happens to be better acquainted with it. So it helps create networks of people that you can rely on and in fact, ultimately do joint research with. I think also younger scholars need to consider how their own research fits into the broader research trends in the field. They need to be listening to paper presentations and reading articles that are a bit outside their own specialized research interest, because it's going to have to fit within the broader kinds of research there. At some point, they're going to have to teach the broader kinds of research. So they need to understand that. The other thing is they'll learn methods when they do that they may not have been using in their own part of research that might in fact provide really useful ways to approach some of that. I think it's also important, I think it's critical actually, that we look at literature outside of communications. there's a lot of good research in economics, management, political science and policy, organizational studies that look at media and communications, and they have really good theoretical backgrounds that are applicable, that you could use, and they provide different lenses for looking at media and communications firms, and are really useful to understand. They strengthen our research and make our research more desirable and more useful for people in other fields as well. Well, lately I've been doing a lot of research looking at digital platform regulation, how it emerged globally, and particularly why and how antitrust and content control policies are emerging. A lot of that has to do with economic and managerial factors within companies. So I've been doing a lot of work in that area. I have a new article that came out just recently in Journal of Digital Media and Policy, and it really looks at the Australian digital platform inquiry, which was the first major inquiry to take place looking at platforms and at their economic impact. And that article looks at that and looks at how what happened in Australia was really accidental policy, which is a really interesting concept in policy studies, and looked at how that began to influence antitrust policy globally, and why that particular inquiry and the way it presents and the results of it have really set off a lot of policy transfer and really looking at antitrust in a very different way globally. I have a chapter that's coming out in the Sage Handbook of Digital Media Economics soon on competition, monopoly, and antitrust, which really looks at the economic and legal basis for government actions against large tech companies, which is a huge area of activity right now, and explaining the economics that they use, why antitrust law is being used in the way it's being used, how antitrust law has changed over time, and that is pretty useful. And for me, the questions around media economics have always revolved around not the economic questions themselves, but how those economic issues lead to policy responses and rationales, and that really is where I go to. And those approaches were really informed by the ideas that I explain in my textbook on media and communications policy making that came out in 2020. That policy is looking more and more for evidence from economics, from other fields. And but in the end, for me, it's the idea of how do we as a society get the kind of media and communication operations we need to be functioning society.